Welcome back, everybody, to our next session. I hope you're enjoying the event so far and all of our presentations. I know I am. This is the last session I'll be moderating for you today, and then I'll be passing the mic back to Matt for the rest of today's sessions. But I'm super excited for this session because I get to introduce Kevin Rustagi to you from our Lyft team. So we met last year in the middle of pandemic, and it's just been really exciting working with the entire Lyft team. So with that, Lyft is an Agility Prime original equipment manufacturer and Sitter awardee, and is the leader in flying orb technology. Kevin is the Director of Business Development at Lyft Aircraft, and he coordinates partnerships for research and development, Agility Prime, and first response uses. As a private pilot of Cessna and Cirrus models, he's a strong advocate for unlocking the skies. His prior experience includes co-founding high-tech apparel company, Ministry of Supply, and studying engineering and business at MIT and Stanford. Lyft Aircraft is based in Austin, Texas, and is making aviation history by launching the world's first experiential entertainment business based on an entirely new type of personal electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. Hexa is their first model, and it is a multi-rotor amphibious ultralight aircraft, democratizing the experience of piloting an aircraft. Kevin joins us today to discuss his company's perspective and experience working with the Air Force's Agility Prime program. Kevin, over to you.
Thanks so much, Elaine. It's been really great to work with the folks in Ohio and Jobs Ohio, the Dayton Development Coalition. We're doing a lot of flight tests up in Ohio, working with the Air Force Research Lab. So it's been a great experience. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much to everyone for joining. Very excited to share about what we're doing here at Lyft Aircraft. We're one of the first electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft to go into production. And so I'll share a little bit of an overview on our company and what we're doing, and then also share a video of a demonstration we did here just a couple weeks ago that is totally unedited. So I'll share those two things. And then lastly, talk a little bit about what we're doing with Agility Prime. So yeah, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll get rocking and rolling. So the first screen I'll share is a bit of background on our company. So we were started in 2017. I'm gonna go through this quickly. If you are curious to read more, feel free to go to our website, lyftaircraft.com/story. So we were started not too long ago, 2017. Decided to start small, focusing on the Part 103 ultralight regulations, which allow anyone who is able-bodied and an adult in the United States to fly without a license. It's pretty wacky, pretty wild. We provide a lot of training for the aircraft, and we have a couple different use cases that we focus on as well, which I'll go into. We started off with a small-scale prototype, as everyone does, then to unmanned flight. Safety first. Safety is by far our foremost value here at Lyft. And then moving on to manned flight quite quickly. So this video is having some challenges, but you can come back and check it out. There it is. There we go. So you can see our CEO and founder, Matt Chasen, flying our aircraft we call Hexa. We have 6 pods of 3 independent motors, so 18 independent motors. You can lose up to 6 motors and still be flying. We also have a ballistic parachute on board. It's a huge point of safety. It's here in the center, and that's active above just 10 meters. The aircraft also floats. So we've made a few design changes over the years, unveiled to the public. I'm gonna blitz through these pretty quickly, so feel free to go back and check them if you like. We've shown the aircraft to Jeff Bezos at his Mars conference in Palm Springs. Had a lot of press. People are very excited about this industry, as you may know. You know, the larger companies, some of which you'll hear at this panel, are taking really an air taxi approach, which we think is super exciting. We wanted to get started flying earlier, and so we've created this single seat ultralight because it lets us begin to log hours, begin to really make that progress now and get flying with the public. So it's a different approach. It's more of kind of a groundswell, a bottom-up approach, the other end of the spectrum. So this is a beta flight. We are going to allow the public to fly the aircraft. So after achieving a lot of key safety milestones and third-party reviews, we will be launching a tour for the public to fly starting right here in Austin. And you know, the exact dates, we get a lot of questions about that. And the answer is when we're good and ready. So hopefully in the coming year, we'll be seeing those flights. We've already begun beta test flights with folks that we know here in Austin. We've shown the aircraft internationally in both Dubai, and we have a shot further below of Korea. We're in production. We work with a tier 1 aerospace manufacturer to do pretty complicated carbon fiber structures. It has to be strong. It has to be durable and reliable. This is maybe the most expensive ultralight aircraft ever made. Our aircraft costs out at about $500,000 right now. So we've done some work with the Air Force as well. We'll talk a little bit here in a few minutes about that. This is one of our STTRs or sitters. This is a CAD model, and we're very clear about what's a CAD model, what's a real photograph. And so, you know, it's one of the things I'm really excited about for this industry and our company as well, focusing on saving lives through first response use cases. So in addition to we try to bracket it out into 3 different groups. So we've got, you know, flying with the public, flying for fun, flying for entertainment, for adventure. First response use cases, which can save lives. We just put a press release out about some work we're doing in Ohio in June on that test flight plan for public use. And then also work with the DoD. And there are some other applications of the aircraft as well, cargo in particular. We were selected for the Air Force Initiative Agility Prime, of course. So working with Air Force on that, they've been super supportive, both with, you know, these R&D contracts, SBIR, STTR, but also in-kind support through their air race. We're part of AOI too. So we were honored to receive a SBIR Phase 2 last year. That's really exciting. As part of that, we do demonstrations, one of which you're about to see. This is the former Secretary of the Air Force, then current Secretary Barbara M. Barrett, sitting in Hexa and right after watching a manned flight demo here in Austin at Camp Mabry, where our CEO, Matt Chasen, flew the aircraft. We're now in production. We've done a couple production aircraft so far as part of our SBIR contract, doing those test flights, supporting expanding the flight envelope. We're also going into production even further and ramping up in the coming year. So we've exhibited in South Korea. This is perfect, perfect in sequence. This is our first production aircraft. We did 3 full-scale manned prototypes before, and the quality you achieve through going to production tooling is just incredible. You know, I studied engineering, as Elaine mentioned, and looking at the tolerance stack-ups, looking at just how tight you can get those is just wonderful. And I wish I had more time to share just how clean it's gotten. We have been working on some other applications, as I mentioned, with Air Force. One of them is cargo. This is an image of an STTR we're working on right now at the University of Texas to really work in some greater autonomy. So right now, we call our aircraft semi-autonomous. You get in after doing a VR simulator, and it's a single joystick control. You'll see this in the video I'm about to share. It is so simple and straightforward to fly. We call this Simplified Vehicle Operations, or SVO is the term of art. And what's beautiful about that is we've already incorporated a lot of semi-autonomy into the aircraft, things like geofencing to make sure you don't accidentally run into an obstacle, as well as collision avoidance. So these things, these technologies are really helpful when you start to get into other applications as well. One of the big things that I absolutely love about our aircraft is that it's modular. So the entire rotor plane, this top portion, again, this is a CAD model, that really is the aircraft. The lower parts, the cockpit, we call it the canopy, and the landing gear, those can be detached in favor of different payloads. So while, of course, we do have wiring going to the joystick, the main flight computers and those sorts of things are in the top rotor plane. And that's it's really useful. for other use cases. We like it. We unveiled the first production eVTOL aircraft ever delivered to the Air Force in Springfield, Ohio, back in February. That was really exciting. And then now here we are in April. So this is a good segue into showing you our flight video. This is a real live demonstration, and it was a day. I'll preface it with saying, we had some of our DoD partners. The Agility Prime head, Colonel Nathan Diller, was there as well, and it was really a wonderful showcase to be a part of, with various startups and technologies from the Austin area, really pushing the envelope. And so, during the showcase, we decided that we wanted to fly and show the aircraft flying. It's just a wonderful thing to engage in, because we see these aircraft online, we see images, we see pictures, we even see videos, as I'm about to show you. And it is a whole other thing to see an eVTOL aircraft fly. I myself have a PPL and absolutely love flying Cessna Cirrus, as Elaine mentioned, and it's kind of wild. So, a picture may be worth 1,000 words, but a video is worth more. So I will go ahead and share my screen, and I'll take you through a little bit of this video. We don't have time to show it all, but I'll show you a few key components. So the share audio function, we haven't figured out how to get that to work, but we'll go ahead and show you the video itself. So aircraft starts out on the ground. I'm gonna blitz through this. I'll mute it so I can narrate here. This is a 360 video from a camera we mounted on the aircraft. Again, you can see the rotor plane here, 18 independently driven, all electric motors. This is our head test pilot, Jace Digit McCown, the US Air Force Academy, flying the aircraft. He gets in. Now the aircraft it looks large, but it's actually not that large. It's about 15 feet in diameter and weighs less than 2 or 3 people, 432 pounds. Again, that's less than a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. So we've got a remote pilot on the ground who can take over in case of any sort of safety issues, but rest assured, Jace is flying the aircraft from on board. So it has both remotely piloted capabilities, but also on board, of course. This is aircraft. This is our Hexa aircraft. You can see the prototype number there. He's getting ready to take off. Motors spin up. And the beautiful thing is we can teach almost anyone to fly the aircraft in a matter of hours in the basic mode. There are more advanced modes and whatnot that we'll get into, but even that training we expect to take about a weekend. So much, much simpler to fly. I will say, as you watch this video, I'm gonna go ahead and scroll around. We're in the UT Stadium. It was a day of fairly high winds. So winds at the main Austin weather station were gusting up to 30 knots that day a couple weeks ago. And within the stadium, we were protected from a lot of that, but there are some vortices, some eddy currents that come down in. And I got a B in fluid dynamics, so I can't explain exactly how, but the engineers in the crowd will appreciate just how much compensation one would have to do if one were totally controlling the aircraft's response. But of course, with 18 rotors, how do you do that? How do you control 18 independent motors? So we have a triple redundant flight computer that helps us handle that workload. You can see the aircraft itself is compensating for the wind. It's a little hard to see on the 360 camera, but you can see as he comes around this corner, there's a dip. And what we've described it as, it's more like riding a horse, more like flying something that doesn't quite have a mind of its own. Of course, you're the one controlling the aircraft, but if you tell it to hold a position, it will hold that position, much like a drone. So this is a new type of aircraft, something that's more akin perhaps to a helicopter in terms of vertical takeoff and landing, but looks a little bit more like a drone and has some inspiration from the drone world as well. So he's flying around. This again has zero editing and is one of our production aircraft. And so he goes on like that and does some maneuvers and whatnot, and that's nice. And then he's coming back into land. Here we go, I'll take a step back here. You can see it holds a position without even taking the joystick. So that's a wonderful, we call it semi-autonomy. You can see he's coming into land here. I really like this overhead shot. Coming into land. Camera itself is a little bit wobbly. The truss does react just a hair to the winds. And there he is. And so that was a real privilege to be able to share with folks here a couple weeks ago. We are flying, and we are doing flights not only under our flight test contract, but we are also going to be flying with the public, starting flying on first response missions and, of course, DoD applications. So I'll kind of wrap there by saying it's been wonderful to, thank you for the notes in the chat. It's been wonderful to work with, Jobs Ohio, OFRN, and those groups who are really supporting this happening, as well as, of course, Agility Prime. We had a conversation with our TPOC, our liaison at the Texas International Guard, who started this process with a year and a half ago, and he was so excited, saying, this is going to be a thing. They're really throwing a lot of enthusiasm behind this, and I live in a world where people get excited about things, and I was going, is there really a there? Is this really happening? And it is. Not only have they thrown a lot of support behind this industry in terms of hosting conferences such as this, but also in terms of really putting those dollars to work on R&D. So it's been wonderful. If it was the X20.D STTR program where they released a record $38 million in phase ones, or programs like ours where we're working on a phase 2 contract and working on multiple STTRs. It's just so wonderful to see not only those dollars, but also that support, that time, that expertise that AFRL and those groups are really lending. So it's something we're certainly grateful for, something we're excited to participate in. And it's something we're excited for the community to be involved in, for other folks to join in with us to really make this technology a reality, to show the community that it's real and to make it as safe as we can. So I'll cede the rest of the time for questions, and thank you so much.
Well, Kevin, super exciting. Thank you so much. Your excitement is contagious. And like I said earlier in my first session, I said, as an aerospace engineer who hasn't practiced for a while, especially since I left the Air Force and those jobs, just seeing, the amazing aerodynamics and, how you all have been able, to fit this into that Part 103 for the Ultra is just amazing. Also, in the previous session that I moderated, there was a question about, when do we think people will be flying? And it was more geared towards, everyday people having it like we do for our cars. But you all are clearly flying now, and that's really exciting because it gives everyone that vision that it's not just pie in the sky, but that it's really happening. So thank you for sharing that great presentation. So we have a few questions, if you're amenable. I'm going to take a few that I see in the Q&A and combine them because I think they have to do with similar things in terms of security. So talking about, hey, how does your vehicle not get hacked when it's flying around in the stadium in your example there? And then related to that, if you could tie in also, are there any machine learning capabilities that your systems do you think that will need to develop as you progress?
Yeah, I think these are great questions. So on cyber in particular, and I'll give kind of a high level response here. It's super important, right? You don't want to have a jam situation, GPS denied, spoofing, of course. These are all major concerns. Right now, we're limiting our flight area, right? And really keeping that close, having that sandbox we can play in. As we progress, as we become more and more operational, we're going to be working in cybersecurity and already are working with DoD on that. So that's a part of the current contract. That's a part of future contracts we hope to work on. So, there are companies out there like Shift5 is another Agility Prime contractor we've spoken with that is a great white hat firm that talks about some of this stuff and really proactive approaches to take. I think we have to be proactive about it right now when we're in that sandbox. There was another part to your question, Elaine. There was a cyber piece and there was another part.
Well, related to machine learning.
Machine learning. Yeah, so, for starters, we're kind of semi-autonomous. With machine learning, I think it's a really great tool to use in terms of getting to greater levels of autonomy. And that could be helping the aircraft understand the best approach to take in a new environment, in a return to home situation or emergency landing situation, or helping to pathfind and understand a new environment, especially as we get into greater autonomy. If we do see our aircraft being used for these cargo use cases or first response use cases. I think ultimately, if you look 30 to 40 years out, we're excited for people to fly. We always want to have people be able to fly. And there are going to be use cases that are fully autonomous. I think it's a long time before we get to the level of safety we really need, but it's something we're working on now.
Awesome. Great. So you've got a lot of questions, my friend. So I'm just going to try and take as many as I can if I can combine some here. But there were some kind of spec questions. For example, how long in the air between battery charges? And the other one was, do you think you'll be able to expand this design for more than one passenger?
Great questions. We get those questions a lot. They're super important to ask. So we have a flight time of about 1,000 hours per battery charge. I'm just kidding. We don't have flight time of 1,000 hours. In the future, we might. Currently, we were optimized for safety. So saying, hover optimized, we're not a transition aircraft. And so we can pause and hover the entire time. And that's a huge deal, especially when you get into these tighter urban scenarios, when you get into scenarios where you may want to pause, you may want to reverse, things like this. So our flight time is shorter than you're seeing with transition aircraft. So 8 to 15 minutes, which seems like awfully short if you're thinking of like a 3-hour trip to San Francisco or something, right? You can actually go quite far with that. So 10 to 15 miles, given the ultralight limits for airspeed being 55 knots. And that's a huge place to get started. We're certainly excited about expanding. There are future, many different pathways to go for longer range, and we're pursuing those. In terms of a two-seater, we get this question a lot. Could you do a two-seater? Could you do a four-seater? And the answer is yes. We're focused on the one-seater right now. The two-seater could come in coming years. It really is a point of scaling the aircraft. It's also a point of efficiency. So you want to make sure you're building those efficiencies as you scale, so you don't sacrifice. There are other companies people have noted our similarity to the company Volocopter in Germany. It turns out 18 rotors is just a really good idea if you're going to do a multi-copter like this. So independent designs, quite similar. We've spoken with them. They are about, for a two-seater, they're about 4 times our size, so twice the diameter. Again, kind of, thinking of that size. So the single seat is a good place to start, but we'll see.
It'll come, I am sure of it. All right, so another question is in terms of the material. You talked about how strong the material needs to be, but also obviously with the Part 103, the weight requirements. So the question has to do with, is it carbon fiber epoxy material?
It is carbon fiber. Yeah.
And follow up, another kind of spec question is, what are the noise level in decibels for its flight?
It's super loud, totally intolerable, way louder than a helicopter. It will never be adopted. I'm kidding. It's much quieter.
Double hearing protection, right?
We certainly give our pilots ear protection. In terms of decibel levels, I'll kind of demur on that right now because it really depends on where you are. I'll say, having heard the aircraft, having seen the aircraft fly, and we do have some videos online, that beta test flight has audio with it, so I encourage people to listen, to watch. Our aircraft is not only quieter than a helicopter, but the frequency is different. You don't have the same frequency modes, you don't have the same base frequencies. So when you think about buildings, needing, I'm gonna get a little techie for a second, 3x the wavelength in terms of foam protection for really, really totally damping out sound. This from some research done at MIT. So having that higher frequency and having it be much quieter, we think it's going to be a really good application for urban use cases.
All right. Well, I'm going to go over a little bit on our time, and then Matt will be ready to take the next session. So if folks want to take a break, they can do that and then catch the live stream. But I did want to ask you some questions about your experience working with the government. You heard from Colonel Diller, and I know your team has been working closely with him as well as the state we have. But one of the questions is, what was your favorite thing about working with Agility Prime, and how did you prepare to work with government folks?
Both great questions. So, one of the classic things people say about government is, there are concerns about really speed, and bureaucracy. And I think what Agility Prime has done, and look, everybody's always improving, ourselves included, they move fast, right? And even when, the chips are down, especially last year, obviously we all went through a quite difficult time. They had our backs and were with us, and let's especially on our phase 2 in particular, getting that contract through, and also really helping guide us as a startup on, not having worked with DoD before, a year and a half ago. What forms do we need to fill out? What things do we need to attend? And obviously we're proactive, we ask questions, and having that guidance has been super helpful. It's clear that they really want to work with startups, work with small businesses to help them grow, to help them scale. I think for us, the thing we've most enjoyed, there's so many things, but I think the level of expertise and care that they bring, right? It's kind of a warmth and competence piece. Having folks who have worked on F-35 program, F-22 program, right? Yeah, I'm seeing it in the background. It's beautiful. Oh man, I can't wait to, if there's ever an opportunity, just putting it out there. It's so fun. I feel like, aircraft people always nerd out over each other's aircraft, right? And having folks who have worked on those programs when they're in a safety meeting, going through with saying, okay, we need a military flight release, be able to do flight test, and again, getting kind of jargony here, but having folks who've worked on those programs say, well, how have you thought about redundancy? Is this part redundant? What if this fails? What if that fails? It's so helpful because we think about that stuff, and having their support also, it's that kind of hive mind piece. They are so communicative and supportive. And so, I'm glowing talking about it. Certainly we like having the R&D contracts as well. The financial support doesn't hurt. But it really is that expertise in that time, I would say, that are the most valuable things.
Awesome. Well, being one of a former government folk as I was, I definitely have to agree that, especially with the AFWorks and the Agility Prime team, they are really pushing the envelope and bringing, companies like yours into the fold. And I've always said, advanced air mobility was coming, but Agility Prime has really poured a lot of fuel on that fire. And I'm super excited to be working with you and Lyft, our partners at OFRN, Jobs Ohio, DDC, and ODOT, because it's just been a great year now almost that we've been working together. So thank you, and good luck to you. And we will see you in Springfield, Kevin.
Thanks so much. Can't wait. And we'll see folks in the panel next as well. Thank you.
That's right. Okay.